Kirk Norbury here, and welcome to one of my Lightroom course videos. Today we're going to be looking at, getting atmospheric black and white images in Lightroom 5. So I just thought I'd go through a couple of the images I've done in the past, which have worked out really well in black and white. You can see the 4 of them here. Just made them a bit bigger. So you've got the lighthouse, we've got and a couple from Iceland as well, Skogafoss, a few mountains, and the Svartifoss waterfall. And what I'm going to go is show you how to get the images, make them really pop, make them really stand out when editing them for black and white. So if I go, just make this a little smaller, like that. And now I'll show the originals so you get an idea of the before and after. So you see the lighthouse here. This is quite a standard sort of a plain image. This is long exposure. This is a 5-minute exposure on the lighthouse using a 10-stop filter. So you've got to be able to. The camera captures so much detail in the raw file. You've got to bring it out and show the best of it. So first I'll be going through this image and showing you how I got it to something like this. Okay. So I first just go to the develop module, and what we'll be looking at, is the first is your basic module on your right hand side, just going through, seeing what works. Now there's 2 ways of editing black and white. So you can do it one with the saturation here. You can just turn that all the way down and see what you get from it, and from there you can work on it. You work with contrast, clarity, your whites and your blacks, and see what you can do with the image. Or you can go into this black and white module here, which automatically renders it to black and white, and then you can go through each color channel to change the darkness or the brightness of that channel. Now if I go back, which to my original, if I just press that again, just click reset, and just take me back. Looking at that, there isn't that much color in it. It's a lot of blue. You can see a little bit of most of it yellowy gold colours, so really it's not going to do much when I edit it in black and white, so I'm going to leave it in normal. Just gonna put it back so the crop's changed, my original crop, there we go. So that's back to how it was originally. So the first thing I look at, well, obviously this image, I'm just going to put the saturation down and see where it takes me. If you look at the white and black channels, you can then move them to see what effect they have on your shot. So, bring the blacks down a bit and also increase the white a bit. But one thing I always do is just go straight to the clarity. So I start punching that in, and it starts usually bringing detail out in the clouds, detail out in this metal structure, the lighthouse. Add a little bit more. Next thing I usually do is add a bit of contrast as well. Always works well, contrast on black and white images. So a little bit more. Now you can see in this hit area here it's a little bright, so just bring the highlights down a little bit. There you go. Now due to the highlights, it's brought down the brightness of the lighthouse, which isn't ideal because you want it to stand out a bit. So that'll be in the shadows. So the shadows will bring it out, but the shadows is also bringing out more detail on an image as a whole. But I'll be able to change that a little bit later with a vignette. So bring that out to somewhere I'm happy, which I'm glad we're there. So next I'll go into effects. I always enjoy a bit of a vignette on my images, especially the black and white. So I just take it in a little bit and I always have the feather on quite a lot, because if you have it at 50, you can see the gradation between the vignette starting and ending, and I'd rather have it blend into the images, so I have it turned down a bit. And it's always handy to look at your navigator image, because you're looking at a thumbnail, and looking at that always helps at seeing the image at different sizes, and you'll be able to tell whether the vignette's too much, sometimes easier by looking at a smaller image. So I'm quite happy with that. Now, next thing I always do with black and white is split toning. It's very subtle, but I always feel like it brings out a bit of colour into the image. It gives it more of an antique look, it gives it more of a vintage style, and I always like it. And the way I do it is I add a little bit of orange to the highlights, only a tiny bit. You can already see the difference, so I'm going to turn that down a little bit. And then I also add a little blue to the shadows, and it has this sort of metallic look to it, and it's very subtle. As you can see there, that's the sort of image I'd go for. Now, we've got quite a lot of clouds moving around here due to the long exposure, so I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit more. I'm just going to up the clarity just a tiny bit more and see what I can bring out. Now, what else I could do is I could actually paint on here and darken the exposure a little bit. Actually, I'd rather leave it, because the brightness around the lighthouse kind of makes it stand out with the darker clouds surrounding it, and it kind of draws the viewer straight into the middle of the lighthouse. So that's the first image. So if we just go to the grid, and that's all done on the basic channel, it's just looking at your highlights, looking at your shadows, adding clarity and contrast really does make them stand out. So you can see, looking at both images, I got it close, but I didn't get it as close as my original, but you know, it's pretty much there. It shows what you can do. Next image is of Skogafos. So this is my master one, this is the final edit, and this is the original. You know, this is the raw file straight out of the camera. This was taken on a D800 on my Iceland trip last year. So again, the first thing I would do was a develop module and put the saturation straight down and see what I've got. And already I like what I see. Yeah, this is the copy, which I've made just a virtual copy to show you my editing, but already you can see that it's already quite close to my final edit. So here, what I'll do is notice that the exposure was quite dark, so I'm going to up the exposure a bit. Now, you're probably thinking I'm going a little too far. The white is coming out quite a lot on the waterfall, but you gotta remember that the camera has so much raw data in it that you have to see how far you can push the file without damaging it. And I know if I overexpose, I'll be able to reduce the highlights on the waterfall to get it back to where I want it. So once I've done that, I'm happy with the clouds, I'm happy with the detail I'm seeing in the foreground and in the rocks on the side. I'm just going to start lowering the white balance, and that's bringing back this waterfall to something that I'm happy with. So that's plenty for me. So now, to make it really pop, I'm going to add a little bit of clarity. And there you can see it. The clarity works as just like contrast. It increases and decreases light in different areas to make it more sharper. And I'll also add a bit of contrast, just darkens it up a little bit. The detail in the D800 incredible. I don't use that anymore, if anyone's asking. I'm actually a Canon user now, and I'm sure I can talk about that another time, but let's get back to this image. So now I've got this side here on the left hand side is quite is exposed quite evenly. It's quite nice, but on the left hand side, and the right hand side, sorry, isn't, which is mainly due to the sunlight. You can see it's exposed here, but this area here, I remember, was very in shadow. So I can bring a little bit out of it, but I just know that I can only go so far with it. So I'm going to just see what I can do. See this area here, due to the mist, there's no detail. The mist is actually covering most of the rock formation, so you can't see it anyway. So really, I don't need to do anything more with that. So again, go into split toning. This one's saved on it, so you can see already that this is the effect split toning has on it. And if I just take it away, right, so now we've got the I'll show the split toning. So we've got it complete saturation on no saturation, sorry, on the whole image on the highlights. So again, I just put a little bit of the orange and a little bit of blue in the shadows. So I'm just gonna add them both equally. And then what you can do, you've got the balance as well, where you can have a bit more of one, a bit less of the other. I don't use that often. I'd rather just do it by eye and move and make them first evenish, and then just start dialing it back until I get something I'm happy with. You know, and again, it's just very subtle, but it really does make your images stand out. So, you know, again, it's what you can see from my process is I'm basically working my way down and adding what I think, you know, really helps with black and white images. So the next one I usually go to is effects, and I'll see if a vignette has an image. As you can see there, it doesn't look that good. So I just want a subtle vignette, so I'll just feather it a little bit, and that works out quite well. And the water is really nice. It's got really shine to it. A little bit more clarity might just bring that out a bit. As you can see, then it just brought more detail out into this rock here, making the waterfall stand out more. So yes, I'm really happy with that. So that's the edit I've just done now. And that's the original. So you can see the difference, and personally looking at it, I think I prefer the one I've just edited now. So the next image is this mountain in Iceland. This is the original. Sorry, this is the one taken. This is like the master copy. This is my final edit, and this is the original raw file, straight out the D800. Sorry, you can see the difference. The blacks are really standing out. The detail in the clouds. You know, there's a lot of information there. So we'll go straight into this one. One way to check how much detail you have in an image is go to your exposure and just move it to the left and right and see what information is stored. Now on this one, you can see when it goes dark, you can see a lot more detail in the cloud here. You can see more wisps here. So with the right technique, you'll get that standing out a lot more. So again, white balance down, the saturation down, and I'm going to start with clarity, because clarity on white and black, especially when there's more white like this, really makes it stand out. You know, adds a bit more to the shadow. Just add a little bit of contrast as well. Contrast really helps with bringing the blacks out. Now I've got the blacks to an area here. It's not too bad. I'm actually quite happy with that. And the white's really nice as well, but this area here, the foreground and the sky are not where I want them to be. So what I'll do is, with the actual foreground, I'm going to go to the shadows and just increase that a little bit. So that brings the shadows out a little bit. You go there, it's getting a little too far, a little too bleached out, so I'm going to go back a bit. Around about there. And for the sky, well, this is going to different. I'm going to use a graduated filter to bring down and get more and focus more on the sky. So you can see that there. Now I bring it out quite a lot and feather it out so the transition's a lot smoother. So what I usually do is with sky, I'll start with clarity. Clarity is really great at bringing detail out in clouds. So I'll just click that, and you can see it's already bringing out detail here. And I'm also going to add a bit of contrast as well. Contrast is great for bringing out highlights. Now if you look in the thumbnail, you can already see the difference in the clouds. Now highlights doesn't do that much in a good way. It's bringing it down, it doesn't really do what I want. See the shadows. See the shadows does, as it brings in a little bit more darkness around here, which works quite well. And I'm just going to darken it just a little bit. So just bring the highlights down a little bit there. So you can see the transition into the mountain is actually quite smooth. It doesn't really show up on it very well, which is good to see. If you get a graduated filter in Lightroom and you start to see the effect on different objects which you don't want it to see, sometimes bringing up the shadows helps a lot with that. So we've done that bit there. So I've gone back to this. Now looking at it again, I might just add a little bit more contrast to it. Just increase the shadows just a little bit more. So again, working my way down, split toning straight to orange and the blue. Now you can use any colour you like. At the end of the day, it's up to you how you creatively do it. But this is the way I prefer to do it. It's a style I like in my images, and it's always worked well for me. So it's very subtle, sometimes you can hardly see it, but I know it's there and I enjoy doing it. So going to Vignette, just add a little. Now you can see the effect that's having on the image. It's really making it quite dramatic, turning into quite a dark and moody day, and really helps bring out the image. And then it's only subtle, it's very subtle. So if we look at that and then look back at the original, let's zoom onto it, renders the full preview. There we go. So that's the master edit, and that's my new edit I've just done then for this video. You can see that there's a lot of difference in exposure, probably more white in the sky, but overall it's quite similar, and I'm quite happy with that. So we'll move on to the next one. So this is one of the waterfalls in Iceland, and this is Svartifoss. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but hey ho, that's how I'm saying it. And it's one that's surrounded by basalt columns. It's a beautiful place, and I wanted to. It was quite a harsh day weather-wise, in sense. There was a lot of sunlight, a lot of brightness, very high contrast. We were doing this in the middle of the day, which wasn't ideal. So what I did was I stuck on a few ND filters, and I would use my 70 to 300 and pick out interesting parts of the scene and zoom into them. So this is where the water was falling, and I just loved how the water was falling on the rocks. So that's the master copy, the master edit. So that's the original. And the interesting thing about this image is it's actually not a black and white. It's just because there's a lack of colour in it. If you look closely, you can still see there's a bit of brown in the rocks and a little bit of green here, but when you first look at the image you really do think it's a black and white. It's just because the scene was very desaturated. So I'll go through this image. When you see an image and it has this sort of misty look against it, I've always known that contrast always helps bring it out. So I'm just going to boost the contrast, and really helps with the image. And a little bit of clarity never hurt anybody. So looking at that image, the focus is the water and how the rocks underneath, but you want to bring out the water. which they are the highlights of the scene. And you can tell that when you do that. You can see the difference. So bringing them out, as long as they don't start clipping, check your histogram. You can see that the whites aren't even close. And looking at them there, they're nice and soft, nice colour to them. And then what I'll also do is just reduce the blacks. You know, make it stand out, bring out some hard lines along these rocks, and really helps them bring it out. But what I'm going to do colour-wise with saturation is I'm going to lower the vibrance, and there. And because of the temperature, it's already added a bluish tinge to the image, which is actually quite nice. So I like what it's done there, and then I think I'm going to bring it out a little bit more with a bit more clarity. You can see the detail here. Now here's the thing you can do. If you go here and you get your brush, you can work on, oh sorry, it's not a brush, there we go, sorry. You just go for your brush, and when I use the brush I just show masked overlay so I can see what I'm doing. Let's bring the feather down a little bit. And I'm just using a Wacom tablet for this, and I'm just gonna paint in over the waterfall, just around here. You know, you don't have to do it too detailed, you just need to get it over there as well. So I'm just gonna uncheck that and go over to the module here and work on that file. So now all I'm doing is editing around this water. So let's see what I can do. Let's up the clarity a little bit and the contrast. Let's already bring it out. See, playing with exposure really doesn't help. I've noticed it's more with contrast, highlight, shadows. They're what really help the image bring out. Most of the time I never even touch it, the exposure slider, I just don't use it. So just increase the clarity a little bit more, and it just helps bring a little detail out of it. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to go to split toning. Now it's already quite blue in the highlights, so I'm going to leave this. But I am going to add a little bit of, see, this is a good way of testing the colour. If you add a bit of saturation to one of the dials and then just start moving the colour along, you can see the effect that colour is having on the inner image. Now you look at the blue, it's quite nice. Even the green's quite nice. So you got the orange in that spot there. So it's quite nice. Now you can add blue to this as well, but I'll start making it really blue. Like that, and that's just way too much. So bring it back down anyway and just leave it like that. And I'll also go into effects and see what I can do there. So a bit of vignetting and then feather it back so it's not too as obtrusive to the image. And that's it. Now this image will probably look different to my original edit, but I'm quite happy with it. So that's the original edit, and that's what I've just done now. So they're quite similar. I think the only difference is colour. So that really concludes my video on editing black and white images. You know, just go through the basic module, play around with contrast, play around with the clarity, and what works with black and white is really strong blacks and powerful whites. They really bring out the image a lot more, and I do believe a bit of split toning just gives it a little bit more dynamic to the image. Well, I've hoped you enjoyed this video, and I'm going to be doing a lot more Lightroom videos. Thanks for watching, see you later.